Hello and welcome to this episode of Kennedy Saves the World. So last weekend, I went to a NASCAR race, my second NASCAR race ever with my sexy teenage boyfriend, who is a NASCAR aficionado. He knows everything about the sport. He's been watching pretty much every race since he was 6 years old. He knows every driver, every story crash and race and the ups and downs, the changes in cars and engines and teams and drivers. He has his favorites. He has drivers he detests. So it's been really fun learning about the sport with him through a completely different prism. As you know, I've been a Formula One fan since the Netflix series came out. I started watching that, and it's a really easy sport to kind of get wrapped up in. So as we were going through the parking lot at Dover, we met up with some friends who had driven their RV there, a sick-ass RV. By the way, that's the way to go. Like, they bought an RV, it's amazing, and now they just sort of drive everywhere, and they're big NASCAR fans as well. And I was like, I want an RV. RVs are great. I feel like I would have a great RV life. So as we're in the RV talking to friends, one of the guys was like, Riki Rachtman's here. And it was like, holy crap, it's a big deal. I was like, Riki Rachtman is here? I haven't seen Riki for years. As you may or may not know, Riki and I intersected at MTV. I was hosting Alternative Nation. He was the host of Headbangers Ball. He'd already been well established in music throughout the very dynamic music scene in Los Angeles. He had one of the most popular clubs in LA called the Cathouse, and another club that had another night, I think on Santa Monica Boulevard, if I'm not mistaken. I might be mistaken. So as we're walking through NASCAR, we just walked into a suite. We did not have passes or tickets. It was totally stolen valor. We happened to walk in, and Riki was standing right there. And it was one of those moments where I was like, we had just talked about him. I know he's been involved in NASCAR for years. And there he is standing before me. The Matrix is real. And Riki has been kind enough to come on the podcast, talk about our time at MTV, talk about NASCAR and music. Riki, so good to see you. Welcome to Kennedy Saves the World.
When I saw you walk in at first, it took me back for, I was like, wait a minute. I mean, my memory's shot anyway, but I saw you and I was like, I know that. And you're saying it's Kennedy because you were the last person I ever expected to see at a NASCAR race in Delaware. And it was so awesome to see you. And I had so much fun hanging out with you. And, it was great to meet your boyfriend. It was also, I've worked in NASCAR for a long time, not as much as I used to, but it was just so cool to see you guys at the track. And I think that the four of us need to get an RV and go to Talladega, and we just need to go to because I've literally probably been to maybe 300 or 400 NASCAR races in my whole life. Wow. I've never stayed in an RV, never.
Oh, their setup was it was amazing. I mean, I love RVs because when they're well designed, they don't have to be big, but they have everything you need when they're well configured. And I love the idea of that. I love the idea of mobility and adventure and still comfort at the same time. And it's funny because you and I were at MTV at such a pivotal time. I was talking to a writer today. He's writing a book about music in the 90s. And when I was there, I got there, you had already been at MTV for a couple years.
Really?
And I forgot that you took over Headbangers Ball from Adam Curry, who is now like this super rich billionaire. And I really should have been nicer to him because he was kind of my nemesis at
I thought
MTV.
he was my nemesis.
See, I was wondering, did you have a strained relationship with Adam Curry? Because you obviously came in, I think you had subbed for him, and they're like, oh, we have to make Riki the host. So how did that all pan out?
I was the man, like sort of the man on the street, and I was at my club in LA called Bordello. And so Adam would kind of toss to me. And that was the first time I was ever on TV. I had no idea I was ever going to end up in broadcasting. So I was just this like punk kid on the street in Hollywood. And then they put me on TV, and then they brought me to host it. And, I had no TV experience at all. I was just part of the scene. And I think there was always some sort of ill will. And then one day we did this show that I think you were on called 12 Angry VJs.
Yes.
And we did that. And now, and I've like never ever talked to him, never had anything against Adam, and
No.
never really spoke with him. And that's when he said, and you came in there and you took my job. And he said, and I was like, whoa. But like we said, I think he invented something called the podcast or something. And he's doing okay.
He fired Jeff Bezos. Like, that's how much money he has. But it was funny because alternative music kind of exploded at the same time. And for people in metal, and you didn't have this. Like, there were people who were very defensive about alternative and grunge. Was it because you came from the LA scene, which is so much more dynamic than any other one genre of music, that it never really worried you?
What never worried me about
The change from, because there was this worry that rock was going to change from metal to alternative.
I think you've got it really mistaken here. I think I got it worse than anybody got it, because there was a definite changing of the guards. And, you know, the people that were into a lot, and I don't use the word hair metal because I think it diminishes a great rock and roll scene, but there were some bands that were stupid. I'm the first one to admit it. But what happened is some of these bands like Alice in Chains and Soundgarden and Nirvana came aboard and were on Headbangers Ball first, and then those bands died away. So the people that are fans of that music say, well, grunge killed it. No, they didn't. Those fans, that music died away, and these bands came in. So it looked like a changing of the guards, whether I'm not really sure it was. But, you know, people to this day still say, like, you killed metal because you put Nirvana on. Okay, we never got to say of anything that happened on MTV, really.
But if Nirvana had never exploded, they would have been, you know, they wouldn't have been seen as an alternative band. And I interviewed Matt Cameron a few years ago, and he said his proudest possession is his, I believe it's a heavy metal Grammy. Like, they won for best heavy metal song in, like, you know, 1991 or 1992. And he was really proud of that because, you know, especially Soundgarden, that was way more of a metal sound than whatever alternative was becoming.
People are talking about, oh, Soundgarden, they're this grunge band. I'm like, when I listen to Soundgarden, I hear old Black Sabbath. I mean, for me, I don't listen to genres. I listen to rock and roll. And if it's, you know, Motorhead or Paul McCartney, and okay, maybe those are a little bit separate, but I listen to music, not genres. Yes. And for people to say, like, it's speed metal, it's death metal, it's black grindcore, there's something called mathcore.
Yes.
And shoegazers. Okay, I'm not even really sure what that is, but
yeah. That's funny you say that. I remember asking, I was interviewing the band Republica, and I was asking them, like, what are like, it's a phrase that means something in the UK, but didn't really translate. But there were music journalists that were still using that term. And I'm like, I don't know what that means. Are they like emo kids? Are they emo kids on the spectrum who have a hard time making eye contact?
I don't know. I've never said the word shoegazer.
No, me neither. There are other descriptors that I think are appropriate. So, Headbangers, and it's funny, and I'm sure you get this because people who are our age, who are still into music, that era at MTV is like this pristine period that lives in amber and the specialist part of their adolescent memories. And they're so mad at reality TV for killing MTV. What do people say to you about your time at MTV when you see them and meet them?
Well, to say it's almost a daily thing, but it's like, you know, what happened at MTV? And then the other thing that I got, which I really didn't appreciate until later, is, you know, I did Headbangers Ball, and it's just Saturday night I was there, then Sunday I'm out at the clubs and I'm hanging with my friends. And I never really understood how important it was to certain people who were at home or couldn't get out, or their parents didn't want them to listen to that music. So they would go in there and watch, you know, Headbangers Ball. So I get a lot of people telling me that they grew up watching me, or that thanks for turning me on to Pantera. I didn't pick the videos, but you're welcome. And, you know, and I'm sure that you realized it too, that we didn't realize what we were doing was something that people are going to remember so much. and that we didn't think that we were in, or I didn't think that I was in people's homes when they were kids and they were like, oh, Ricky's on, let's watch Riki and see what bands he's going to give us, and that's those shows. I mean, MTV was really important to people because you got in your room, and when we were kids, we'd run in the room, slam the door, turn on the music loud, and the kids would go in there and turn on their MTV, and and MTV was a thing, and I use this analogy all the time. MTV was a fish aquarium. MTV was on your house at all times. Sometimes you would just walk by it and see what video is on, but it was just always on, and that's something that's just not there anymore.
Yeah, there's no way of replicating that because because of social media, because there are so many over the top channels and cable channels, and cable is fighting to stay alive. There's so much to grab your attention that we didn't realize what we had. Like, they didn't realize. The people in charge had no idea what they had and how fractured attention spans and media would be. And it's funny you say that because I never watched MTV when I was there. I was always out. I was traveling. I was doing stuff. I was working, and I never watched it. And still to this day, I don't like the sound of my own voice, and I don't watch myself on TV. So I don't know what that was like. I know that I watched Remote Control after school. Like, I would rush home from school when I was 15 and watch Remote Control. So when I got to meet Ken Ober and Colin Quinn and Adam Sandler, who was also on Remote Control when he was like 18 years old, like, that blew my mind. So that's the only reference that I have. So are you still involved in music? Because I know that you got into NASCAR, which was like, your turn into NASCAR is like Joe Rogan and UFC. And people don't realize like how big he has been into that scene for so long. A lot of people just know Joe Rogan from his show. They don't even know that he had this time, but it is such a massive sport. How did you get into NASCAR, and was there a musical entree?
No, I always love NASCAR, and even there's times that you can watch me on Headbangers Ball that I was wearing a driver's shirt or something.
Oh, that's awesome.
So I would try to go to races, and then what happened was I had been doing talk radio in LA for a while, and I came up with this idea. I'm like, what if I go on all the rock stations? I'll be the DJ, but in between songs, I'll talk about races and I'll interview drivers my style. It won't be about aero push. It'll be just like, fun stuff. And it got picked up by stations and more stations. And I did that syndicated radio show for 20 years. And then I ended up on Speed Channel and Fox and, working for different outlet tracks and just everything. And I just got so absorbed in the sport that I even moved to Mooresville, North Carolina, which is where this office that I'm at is. And I just got but I saw the sport change, and I'm not really doing much in the sport at all now, which kind of sucks. So I'm just a fan. The sport's changed a lot. But as far as music, what I've been doing the past couple years is, and I'll just kind of turn it back to what you just said about not watching MTV. I do spoken word now. So nice. I had not seen Henry Rollins before. So my wife bought me a meet and greet for Henry Rollins, which I thought was just weird for me to go do a meet and greet. So I was on social media and I was saying, I'm so excited to meet Henry Rollins. And everybody's like, well, you've met him. I'm like, no, I've never met Henry Rollins before. I remember I was a Black Flag fan. I've never met Henry Rollins. And they're like, yes, you did. And they reposted episodes of me interviewing Henry Rollins on Headbangers Ball. Like, I never watched the own show. And my memory's so jacked up. So when I went to see Rollins, I was just like fan guy. And like, I've met everybody in the world. But but I'd never met Henry Rollins, and because I do spoken word now, I appreciate what he does. So I was just like fan guy, and I think I said like, "Hey, I don't know if you remember me," which everybody says. And then I said I was on Headbangers Ball, and then I think he kind of remembered who I was, but I was already left at that time.
That's so funny. Yeah, he's one of the most captivating people. He's a tough nut to crack for sure. But then once you get past his exterior, he's so smart. But the thing about his spoken word shows is they are very funny. I mean, he could legitimately do comedy, but he's so thoughtful. He's so philosophical. But the thing that amazes me, and I've seen, several of his spoken word shows, is he goes off on what you think are tangents, But then he comes right back to the story he started from with an extra point. And he's so sharp and he's so good at what he does.
Don't go anywhere. More Kennedy Saves the World right after this.
So did that inspire you to go out and create a show of your own?
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, you know, everybody's been saying, why didn't you write a book? Why aren't they doing docuseries? Why don't they do that? And I wanted to do that. But then I was going to be doing this big Cathouse rock festival and it fell through. And I kind of toyed with the idea a little bit. And then I just got obsessed with it and wrote the show. And I put like videos and photos. And it's not what people think it is. It's totally different than what people think it is. But I did one show and it sold out. And then I got offered 5 more. And then to this day, I've done 40 shows. 4 in Australia, and I've got one show July 22nd in Vegas. It's the most fun I've ever had, and I was very inspired by him because before, I mean, there's a lot of people that still don't know what spoken word is. They think it's like, you know, old beatnik, like, you know, selling stuff like that. But, you know, I just tell stories, and some of it's, you know, shocking, and I have some highs and some lows, and I share all that openly, like stuff that I wouldn't tell people. I tell on stage, you know, and I remember there were some parts that were about my parents that weren't necessarily good, and they were at my show, and I'm like, God, how am I going to say this? And I still did, and one of them denied it, but that's a different story. And I love it more than anything I've ever done. And even though I've done TV and done radio, and I still have like a couple nice businesses that are small, going up on stage and talking for like 2.5 hours, sometimes more. And people saying like, and reading good reviews and like not getting any hate, which I'm not used to, was really weird and just so flattering, more than anything I've ever done. Because, you know, on MTV, I didn't pick the videos, and, you know, people watch for the guests. But if you show up at my show, I know you're there because you want to see me. So that's kind of a nice feeling for a change.
And Dominic worked on Headbangers as well, right?
Dominic they called him the man in the streets. So on a few episodes, he would go out there and just do stuff like interview people at shows or just do some kind of fun stuff like that.
I had dinner with him and Scott Ian, and it must have been like 1995. And he and Scott Ian from Anthrax were very close friends. And Scott and I were like snowboarding buddies. And he and Dominic and I actually one time drove to the Burton factory in Vermont and got free snowboards, and it was really great. But so we're at this Indian restaurant on 6th Street in the East Village, and Scott and I were there for a while. We're like, where the hell is Dominic? And Dominic comes in, and he's got blood all over his white T-shirt, and it's like, what the hell happened? He's like, you know, this guy, like my ex-girlfriend's seen this guy. And, you know, it's like, I happened to drive by her house, and, you know, it's like, I didn't know she was going to be there. And she's there with this guy. And, you know, it's like, he started popping off, and I'm like, you just beat someone up? And he's like, no, it wasn't like that at all. It was like, you know, he deserved a smack in the mouth. And it's like, and so now I'm here. And he was such a character.
That's why I love Dom, because occasionally when I'm in LA, I'll go see him. I'll stop by his shop, and he is a character, and he's exactly who he is. You know, there's nothing that's and he's hilarious. I love Dom.
I would love to see him, and I would love to catch up. And I do reconnect with people from MTV from time to time, and it's always so fun to see where we were, because it's like high school. Like, you only get a couple of years there, and you really, like, you have to make the most of it. And just those memories and what happened, like, it's never going to happen again, like you just said. And it always leads to our own crazy tangents. And okay, now, before I ask you that question, when you were coming of age into music, everything in LA and Orange County, did you see yourself as more of a punk rocker?
Up until the age of probably 18 or 19. I mean, I always loved Motorhead, but to me, they were a punk rock band. And when I was a little kid, I loved Ted Nugent and Alice Cooper and you know, Deep Purple, and I always loved the Rolling Stones. But I kind of made that transition, but it didn't feel like I was really even though I obviously was, but it didn't feel like I was making a big change from punk rock to metal, because when I would go see Guns N' Roses when they were first starting out, they felt like a punk rock band to me. I mean, a lot of these bands did. And now it's beautiful because like in July I'm going to be giving tours at the Punk Rock Museum in Vegas. So it's fun because everything comes full circle, and people don't realize, like, they knew about my friends with Axl or friends with guys in Faster Pussycat and stuff, but people don't know that way before that I was involved in the LA punk rock scene. And to me, it just seemed like a natural progression. There's a lot of people that are into metal that also have punk rock roots, and I listen to both genres all the time. I love it. I don't know what I would call I mean, I don't know. But yeah, for me, I think it was punk rock, and it was more of like when you're a kid, just kind of like, I don't want to be like everybody else, and it doesn't matter what I'm doing. I like to make people stare. I like to be like, oh, that's a bad person, whether you are or not. And now the stupid tattoos are so acceptable and everything. It's like, you walk into a grocery market where people were scared when you were covered in tattoos, and now they go, oh, you're covered in tattoos just like the principal at my school. I'm like, no, what happened? He's in rebellion.
It's true. There was a time the only people who had tattoos were bikers or Japanese mafia. Like,
Right.
that was it. There was no, like, maybe a sailor on shore leave got a tattoo, but it was scandalous. It was not
great.
the norm.
I miss that, because before, if you would go someplace and you'd see somebody with a sleeve tattoo, you kind of felt like, look, I don't know you, you don't know me, but we're in the same tribe. There is, people picking out, sleeve tattoos, or my wife is a tattoo artist.
A very famous tattoo artist, Leah Vendetta.
Leah Vendetta. And a lot of her clients are women, so, and she gets mad because she's glad that tattooing is so popular because it keeps her working all the time.
Amen.
I'm like, I like it when it was, bad. And now it's like, I think most people have tattoos, but now, and this is going to make me sound like a grumpy old man, but now these kids, they're getting all these ugly scribbles on their face but that's an old man thing, but I know.
Yeah. And it's like, it doesn't feel permanent because, technology exceeds our dreams, and people know they can get a tattoo and they can get it removed, even though it is still a painful process. And, because it used to be like, oh, like the people who do like giant saucers in their earlobes. It's like, when you want a job at a bank, like, that is not going to age well. Like, that, I don't think you could ever fix, but tattoos you can. But I agree with you. Like, the scribbles, come on, man.
It's like Narcan. Is it called Narcan? The stuff that people,
yeah, Narcan. Yep.
If they know they die, they're just going to get a shot with a pin. They're going to be alive again, so they push the limit. Well, if you get a tattoo, you can get it. I don't know what that analogy.
Yeah, it's not nearly as dangerous. How were you cast in the November Rain video? How did that come about?
Well, Axl at the time was one of my best friends. I mean, and I talk about this a lot in the show, but he was the one that hooked up my MTV audition, without a doubt. I said, oh, I'd like to do that show. He's like, okay, let me make a call. So Axl called Abby and said, hey, do you want to see my friend Riki Rachtman and Carol Donovan? And they said, guy that owns a Cathouse, right? Yeah, let's bring him in. So he set up the audition, and he even said, like, hey, I know you got an audition. Do you want me to go with you to New York? I'm like, yeah, going to my audition with Axl, because I sure didn't have any like resume at all. And so, so it helped. And Axl was one of those people that always involved his friends in things. When they did the Spaghetti Incident and they did the Fear song, I Don't Care About You, he brought me in to do background vocals on that. And there's a lot of people that when we watched Guns N' Roses videos, oh, that's Del, that's this person, that's that person. You knew him because back then it was really a community, and they always seemed to like take care of their friends. But I haven't heard from him since. But I
was just going to say, have you seen him? Have you crossed paths? Does anyone still exist in his orbit?
I talked to Slash and Duff still. Mm-hmm. I had dinner with Slash probably out here, probably like 8 months ago.
Oh, nice.
But I don't have any conversations with Axl whatsoever.
What do you think happened to him?
I don't know. I'm sure, I know we're going to talk soon, and I have no idea. But, I'm still a fan. It's not like I'm like, well, screw him, I haven't talked to him. I mean, I owe a lot to that guy. I mean, I'm in an office that still sells Cathouse shirts because he wore it in the Paradise City video, and everybody's wearing Cathouse shirts. So, I still owe a lot to them, but I just wish them all the best, and they're still one of the greatest rock and roll bands.
Amen. I couldn't agree more. And one of those bands like Nirvana that changed music. Like there was a paradigm shift when Guns N' Roses hit the scene. I was just happy because he's from Indiana, and he and my brother went to the same elementary school, and that always stoked me out. Yeah, but it's funny. You never know. So when you were a 15-year-old punk rocker, did you have any inkling that this is how your life would turn out? Multimedia, so many directions, so many institutions. It's like living your life authentically in every realm and every iteration. Did you have any idea?
I had no idea, but I think if somebody would have told me, like, I'm one of those guys that always thinks like no matter what I do, it sucks, and I have the depression thing. I'm always putting myself down, which is what a lot of us do in this business sometimes. And I always knew that something would be okay. But if somebody would have told me that at 61 years old, I'd be sitting in my 2 offices with a mohawk, still getting tattoos, going out on tour, talking to people and telling stories, I'd be like, driving a cool car and having motorcycles, I'd be like, okay, that's okay. Like, I'm like, sometimes I have to stop and realize, like, I'm kind of, some people go, oh, you're having a midlife crisis. You look, I'm like, no, I just never ever changed. I've always been this immature, doing silly things. And I'm very, very happy about that. I never thought that I would ever be in the public eye. I always wanted to. I mean, I'm not going to lie, I always wanted to. I never thought that Headbangers Ball would be something that people would remember. I really never thought that anybody would ever talk about the Cathouse again. And it for a while, it was like, everybody went up to me and it was just like, dude, Headbangers Ball, Headbangers Ball, Headbangers Ball. And I was like, well, I've done other things and this and that. And now it's like when people say Headbangers Ball, I'm like, thank you. I'm very, very proud. And I think back then, I don't know if you feel the same way, but when we were at MTV, we didn't realize that we were in the middle of a magical, incredible time. We didn't realize it. It was just how we were living. And I'm so proud to be part of that slice of life. But I kind of wish I could go back to appreciate it a little bit more,
I agree completely. That is so well said. Like, I had a great time. I could never believe it was really happening to me. But I do wish, like, I hope at some point they invent time travel so, we can get the Winnebago time machine and go back to that time and at MTV in the 90s when that's all there was and just relive it for an hour. Riki, thank you so much for taking the time. Go see Riki live in his spoken word tour. If you see him at a NASCAR event, high five him and you can compare your favorite drivers.
July 22nd, I am in Vegas.
Awesome. You got to do it. It's Sin City, baby. You were made for this. Riki, thank you so much, dear. Always good to talk to you.
I hope we get to hang out, maybe go to the infield in a Winnebago to NASCAR race.
I'm down. I'm so down, and I can't wait to see where the road goes. This has been Kennedy Saves the World, along with Riki Rachtman. I'm Kennedy.
Listen ad-free with a Fox News Podcast Plus subscription on Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Prime members can listen to this show ad-free on the Amazon Music app. Oh, go ahead and leave me a review while you're there. I'd love to hear what you have to say. You've been listening to Kennedy Saves the World on the Fox News Podcast Network.